Body is not just a collection of isolated problems. It's an integrated system. Your gut affects your hormones. Your hormones affect your thyroid. Your thyroid affects your metabolism and your brain. Cortisol affects all of it. Your microbiome regulates your immune system, your neurotransmitter production, and your ability to detox.
Welcome to Health Decoded, your number one source for real health information, with your hosts, Dr. Alessi and Matt Tack.
Health Decoded listeners, if you're dealing with bloating that just won't go away, no matter what you eat, no matter what you try, I need you to hear this. The bloating isn't the problem. It's a signal. Every external symptom you're experiencing, the discomfort, the fatigue, the frustration, has a root cause. And in my years of clinical practice, it almost always leads back to the gut. Nothing else in your body can fully heal until that foundation is restored. I built this framework from my own health journey. I was that patient, frustrated, dismissed, searching for answers. I took everything I learned, refined it through years of clinical testing, and have since helped hundreds of patients achieve complete relief from their symptoms. That became the Total Gut Reset, a step-by-step protocol with one goal: reset your gut in 6 months or less. If you're ready to learn exactly what's causing your symptoms and eliminate them for good, I'm hosting a free webinar where I walk you through the entire framework. The link is in the show notes. Go ahead and register, and I'll see you there. When Karen came to see me, she handed me a list. Not a symptoms list. It was a list of everything she had tried. She'd written it out the night before, and I could tell it had taken a while for her to put this together. 3 different elimination diets, including 2 rounds of keto. She'd been on thyroid medication for years without significant improvement, an antidepressant that her doctor had prescribed with ultimately good intentions, but for symptoms that had started presenting as anxiety and low mood. She was on a probiotic from a health food store for 18 months. She was on hormone creams that she found online, a handful of supplements that somebody in her Facebook group had recommended. She slid the list across the desk and said, "I've done all of this. None of it has worked. So I'm either doing something wrong or I'm just somebody who can't be fixed." And now I want to tell you what I told her, and I want you to hear this clearly. Nothing on that list failed because of her. Every single thing she tried failed because it was addressing the wrong level of the problem. And that's not her failure. That's a failure of the information she was given. Every protocol on that list was a logical response to real symptoms. Keto, she tried for weight and her blood sugar. The thyroid medication she was on because she had a flagged TSH level. The antidepressant was for her mood. The probiotic was for her gut health issues. All of them make sense as to why she tried it, but none of them were designed to address the actual root cause system. Now, that distinction between a logical response to symptoms and an actual root cause solution is what this entire episode is about to be about. And by the end, I want you to understand exactly why those things didn't work and what would have. Welcome back to Health Decoded. I'm Dr. Alessi, and this is episode 3 of a 4-part miniseries. We've talked about the gap between not being sick and actually thriving. We've talked about the real economics of healthcare and what taking action or inaction actually costs. Today, we're going more clinical. We're going to break down specifically and honestly why the most common approaches women try don't produce lasting results. And I'm going to do it without judgment because every patient I've had this conversation with was trying to do the right thing with the information they had. So let's get right into it. Let's start with ketogenic dieting because it is genuinely one of the most popular interventions I hear about in my new patient consultations, and because it actually works for a specific mechanism, for a specific time frame, in a specific population of people. Keto works by dramatically reducing carbohydrate intake, which can lower blood insulin levels, shifting the body from burning glucose to burning fat for fuel. For people with insulin resistance, and that's a significant portion of the population, this can produce some pretty meaningful weight loss changes, improved energy, better blood sugar control, and it often happens pretty quick. So why doesn't it last? Well, the first problem is cortisol. A very low carb diet is a physiological stress. It triggers an increase in cortisol, your primary stress hormone. For a woman in her 40s or 50s who's already dealing with cortisol dysregulation, which, as I talked about in episode 1, is extremely common, adding sustained cortisol stress can accelerate the very hormone disruption she's trying to fix. Now, elevated cortisol drives storage of fat around the abdominal area. It disrupts the HPA axis further, and it actually antagonizes thyroid function. The second problem with keto diet is the thyroid. Prolonged carb restriction, particularly in women, can reduce the conversion of T4 to the active thyroid hormone T3, meaning you might feel great for 8 weeks, then you hit a plateau. Then you start feeling cold, maybe more fatigued, unable to lose weight, despite doing everything right. This is your thyroid adapting to what it perceives as a famine. And if you already had subclinical thyroid dysfunction going on, which is common and often undetected, you've now compounded the problem. The third problem is the gut. Ketogenic diets are often very low in fiber and resistant starch that feed the beneficial bacteria in your microbiome. Over time, this can reduce microbiome diversity and impair the production of short-chain fatty acids, which are critical for gut barrier integrity, immune regulation, and mitochondrial energy. A gut that starts dysbiotic will often become more dysbiotic on a strict keto protocol. If you want to learn more about gut health and dysbiosis and what those terms mean, go back a few episodes to the episode I did on gut. None of this means keto is actually wrong, though. It means that keto is a tool, and like any tool, it produces different results depending on the context. Without knowing your cortisol rhythm, your thyroid status, your microbiome, or your hormonal baseline, using keto is often a guess. And sometimes, it's an educated guess, but it's still a guess, and maybe it's not right for you. Now, let's get a little bit into where thyroid plays in, and so why thyroid medication often isn't enough for these kind of things. And so this one I want to spend some time on because thyroid dysfunction is one of the most underdiagnosed and most inadequately treated conditions that I see, particularly in women. Here's a conventional model, okay? Primary care physician orders a TSH, thyroid stimulating hormone. If it's above a certain threshold, you're hypothyroid. You get a prescription for levothyroxine, which is synthetic T4. So you take this, your TSH comes back into range. Your doctor tells you that you're managed, you're good, yet you probably still feel terrible. Now, why does this happen? TSH, which is thyroid stimulating hormone, measures what your pituitary gland is signaling your thyroid to do. It does not tell you what your thyroid is actually producing, or even more importantly, whether your body is actually converting that hormone into its active form and getting it into the cells. Here's the chain that most conventional physicians never evaluate. Your thyroid produces T4, mostly T4, which is a storage hormone. T4 must then be converted to T3, the active hormone that actually runs your metabolism, primarily in your liver and in your gut. If your liver is congested, if your gut is dysbiotic, if you're deficient in selenium or zinc required for these conversions to happen, if you're under significant physiological stress, T4 will instead convert to reverse T3, which is essentially a brake on your metabolism. It blocks T3 receptors and makes you functionally hypothyroid, even if your TSH and T4 look fine. And so it can get confusing. I've had patients on thyroid medication for 5, 10 years who never had their free T3 or reverse T3 measured, not one time, because it's not on the standard panel. Now, when we measure it, the story changes completely for these people. Additionally, thyroid medication actually treats the hormone level. It doesn't treat the gut dysbiosis, which is impairing conversion. It doesn't treat the adrenal dysfunction that's making the whole system unstable. It doesn't treat the autoimmune component, Hashimoto's, that in many cases is the actual driver of the thyroid dysfunction in the first place. Hashimoto's is an autoimmune condition, so managing thyroid hormone without addressing the immune system is just that. It's management. It's not actually treatment. Your thyroid isn't an isolated organ. It's one node in a hormonal network that includes the adrenals, the gut, the liver, and your immune system. So treating it in isolation produces partial results at best. Now, the problem with antidepressants from this patient that we're discussing. Now, and I want to make sure I touch on this. This is a sensitive topic, and I'll address this carefully because the physicians who prescribe antidepressants to perimenopausal or menopausal women, they're not being negligent. They're responding to symptoms that look in, a quick appointment like depression or anxiety, and they're prescribing the tool that they have available. The problem is it's the wrong tool for the underlying cause. And without understanding the deep underlying cause, that can often lead to more problems down the line. Perimenopausal hormone fluctuation, which specifically looks like declining progesterone and kind of the roller coaster of estrogen, it produces symptoms that are clinically almost indistinguishable from depression and anxiety. If you're not looking at the hormonal picture, irritability, sleep disruption, mood instability, this kind of flattened effect, inability to concentrate, low motivation, low mood, these are textbook perimenopause symptoms. They're also textbook presentations for referral to psychiatry. So it's very important to make the distinction. And when it comes to being a doctor, we always say, do no harm. And so if we're not addressing the deeper underlying causes and just prescribing medication, we are not following the do no harm policy. SSRIs, they work by modulating serotonin signaling. They don't actually restore hormones. They don't restore progesterone. They don't stabilize estrogen. They do not address the HPA axis dysregulation that is often occurring. So they might blunt some of the emotional symptoms, which can feel like maybe a partial improvement, while the underlying hormonal cause continues to progress untouched. And they carry a cost. So SSRIs can blunt libido. They can impair your sleep architecture. They can cause weight gain. And kind of relevant to our earlier conversation, they do not address the root cause. So patients often remain on them indefinitely because it's never resolved. As soon as they come off, they're right back to that feeling of lousy. I've had patients who've come to me. They've been on antidepressants for years, maybe 5, 6, 7 years. And for what was from the beginning a hormone problem. When we address the hormonal root cause, their mood symptoms often resolve, and there's no need for these antidepressants in the first place. Now, it's not always the case, and that's why I wanted to preface it. Genuine mood disorders, they require the appropriate treatment, but it is the case often enough that it represents a significant systemic failure in how midlife women are evaluated and treated. And that's why we actually work hand in hand with psychiatrists. We have a very trusted psychiatrist that we will go back and forth with patients and, hey, does it require medication at this point? Or is this more of a functional issue that we need to restore balance and homeostasis? And so if you're on an antidepressant and you've never had a comprehensive hormone panel, that's a conversation worth having with a clinician who will actually look at the whole picture. You can give us a call anytime. You can reach out if you're a listener and you want to just have a 15-minute discovery call. We do those all the time to see if this is something that we could help benefit you. Now, getting into the next piece of this patient, the probiotic conversation. So, a probiotic that doesn't work is worth as much as what it is, right? The probiotic market is worth billions of dollars. And the vast majority of the products driving that market are actually clinically inadequate. And they have pretty meaningless gut therapeutic purpose. And so here's why. Most commercial products, the probiotics, contain a small number of bacterial strains. It's often Lactobacillus acidophilus and a few others at the concentrations that are basically borderline relevant at best. But more importantly, the probiotic you buy at a health food store isn't selected for your microbiome. It's a generic product designed for general sale. Your microbiome is a community of trillions of organisms with over 1,000 distinct species. So supplementing 2 or 3 generic strains without knowing what your microbiome actually looks like is trying to fix a very specific engine problem by randomly adding some generic car parts to it. It's a kind of a crude example, but it makes sense. The second issue is sequencing. If your gut has significant dysbiosis, meaning an overgrowth of potentially pathogenic bacteria, fungus, parasites, or having compromised gut barrier integrity like leaky gut, if you just go adding probiotics into that before addressing the problem, it's going to be futile and often make the problem worse. You're trying to plant seeds in soil that hasn't been prepared. And so we actually utilize a system at Ascend Functional Health called the 6R protocol, Total Gut Reset, where we follow a systematic approach where we, number one, remove, then we replace, re-inoculate, repair, rebalance, and then reintroduce the system. And it exists precisely because sequencing matters. You know, if you're re-inoculating where you're putting beneficial bacteria back in as step one, you're skipping steps. And oftentimes you're not going to be able to get the gut back to the full health where it needs to be. Now, the third issue with probiotics is that probiotics alone don't address the gut barrier. So leaky gut, which is that increased intestinal permeability, did a podcast on this a few episodes back. Go listen to that. This is a driver of systemic inflammation. Anytime a patient comes in and they have immune dysregulation, food sensitivities, brain fog, fatigue, joint pain, eczema, itchy skin, those kind of things, we're looking at leaky gut. And probiotics don't actually repair the gut lining. That requires specific therapeutic nutrition, targeted nutrients, things like L-glutamine, zinc, carnosine, removing, obviously, the inflammatory drivers that cause the damage in the first place. And that's why remove is always step one. A quality, strain-specific probiotic used at the right point in a comprehensive system protocol can be genuinely therapeutic. Now, a generic probiotic from the supplement aisle of the store used without any assessment of your gut problem, save your money because it's going to be counterproductive. And so the common thread of everything what we're getting at in this whole mini series that I wanted to really just educate on is that every approach we've talked about, keto, thyroid-focused medications, antidepressants, generic probiotic use, these all share a common flaw. They're designed to address a symptom or a single biomarker in isolation. They're not designed to address the underlying biological system. Your body is not just a collection of isolated problems. It's an integrated system. Your gut affects your hormones. Your hormones affect your thyroid. Your thyroid affects your metabolism and your brain. Cortisol affects all of it. Your microbiome regulates your immune system, your neurotransmitter production, and your ability to detox and absorb nutrients. So these systems do not operate in individual columns. When you treat one piece without understanding how it connects to the whole, you get partial results. At worst, you actually address one problem while maybe inadvertently worsening another, as with like the example of keto driving cortisol elevation or the thyroid medication ignoring the adrenal co-dysfunction. Now, this is not a criticism of people who recommended those things to you, if you've ever experienced this. It's a description of a functional, foundational limitation in how medicine is structured. Conventional medicine is organized by specialty. An endocrinologist for your thyroid, a gastro for your gut, psychiatrist for mood. But it's rare that in conventional medicine, anyone is looking at the entirety. No one is asking how the thyroid dysfunction or the gut dysbiosis or the hormonal axis disruption and the moods are all connected because they're all manifestations of a same underlying biological state. Systems medicine, what we call functional medicine, starts from the opposite premise. Everything is connected. The question is always, what is driving the system into dysfunction? And the answer is almost never a single thing. So Karen that I was discussing from the start of this episode, when we finally had her complete picture, we found exactly what I'd have predicted. Significant gut dysbiosis, impairing her thyroid hormone conversion, HPA axis dysfunction, which elevated her cortisol, disrupted her sleep, her body composition. She had estrogen dominance, driven partly by impaired gut estrogen metabolism and liver basically backed up, and a micronutrient profile that made multiple systems deficient of those raw materials that they actually need to function. Once we had that whole picture, we actually were able to build a protocol that addressed them in the right sequence. Within 4 months, she was off antidepressants, working with her prescribing physician. That wasn't us. Her thyroid medication was adjusted based on a proper panel. Her energy had fundamentally changed. She lost weight that hadn't budged in years. And she came back at her follow-up and she left us a review saying she's not a person who can't be fixed. And she was skeptical, but she was just working with a map that was missing most of the picture. And so that's it. That is exactly it. Now, I want to leave you guys with this today. Next week is the final episode in this series, and it's the one I'm looking forward to the most because it's all about the destination. We've been building this story over the last few weeks, and this is about what actually thriving in your 50s and 60s and beyond looks like. Not just managing decline, but genuinely optimizing yourself. If you stayed with me for 3 episodes, episode 4 is where it's going to pay off. If today's episode described your experience or this felt like it hit home to you, the approaches you've tried, maybe partial results, frustration from not getting where you want to be, I want to invite you to have a different kind of conversation. Not a conversation about just managing your symptoms too. Conversation about actually finding the root cause for once. You can book a discovery call. The link in the show notes will take you to our page. Bring your history, bring your labs. If we need to run other labs, we can do that. Let me know all the things you've tried. I need to know everything because it all plays into your story in which I can then build a complete picture. So again, I'm Dr. Alessi. This is Health Decoded. I appreciate you sticking with me. I look forward to seeing you in the final episode of this 4-part miniseries. See you next week.
Thank you for tuning in to Health Decoded, where we break down the truth about all things health and empower you to take charge of your well-being. If you found value in today's episode, please subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who needs to hear this. For more resources, personalized support, or to have your questions answered live on the show, visit Ascend Functional Health and head to the contact page to connect with us directly. Until next time, stay curious, stay empowered, and remember, your health is in your hands.